You already said something about this point, like the imperialists have destroyed the society so much that we cannot even imagine different possibilities emerging from this very society. I was reading your book, Red Star Over the Third World, and Karl Marx was writing to his daughter that inequality is like an abomination to Muslims. They are against this idea of inequality. Their religion is not allowing it. So one is that idea of religion, that it is against inequality, it stands for justice. And now I think that because of these imperialists, because of these interventions, and because of their discursive wars, then which made these extremist terrorists the authority on Islam, we have almost forgotten that aspect of our culture, of our religion, which was as seen by Karl Marx. So I want to ask how these imperialist forces and interventions have changed our very identity, like the way we substantiate our identity with values.
I mean, I've been interested in this for a very long time because, um, the history of Islam with the left
Mhm.
has a very fascinating story. Long before Marx arrives, there are debates within all the religious communities about whether you want to believe that heaven comes after you die, or
Mhm.
the job is to produce heaven on earth.
Yes.
And this is a debate in all religions.
Mhm.
And in Islam it's been interesting because whether it's the traditions of the different schools of philosophy, yeah, of
Mhm.
Islam, or it's in the Sufi traditions and so on. There's been debates about the role of a prince,
Mhm.
or about the need for everybody to be treated as equal.
Mhm.
Why Marx said that to his daughter is because he was interested in the fact that in Islam hierarchies were abolished.
Yes. Mhm.
Supposedly, yeah.
Mhm.
Even though we know that
Yes.
humans are very difficult to
Yes.
make into equal beings. I mean, even in Islam, there is the idea of the sharifs and the razil and
Yes.
ashrafs and this and that. I mean, distinctions, and the caste system comes in, and it's very difficult to actually live as equal.
Mhm.
But technically, when you go inside a masjid, nobody asks you at the door of the masjid what's your background. You wash your hands and thing, and you go in. Yeah, and there was that idea of equality. Okay, it's gender segregated, but idea of equality was there, and that's what Marx was referring to. But then Marx said, look, if in Islam they don't advance to a socialist understanding of society, then uneven society is going to corrupt Islam. Well, not long after, you have the emergence of the Al Saud family in Saudi Arabia,
Mhm.
which unites the tribes, takes over becomes a custodian of Mecca and Medina and so on. And then when oil is discovered, tries to say that Saudi Arabia, or the kings of Saudi Arabia, are the main wisdom on Islam.
Mhm.
And in 1962, in collaboration with the CIA, the Saudi monarchy creates the World Muslim League,
Mhm.
which then promotes, very, very hierarchical ideas of Islam.
Mhm.
Anti-communist literature is produced in Saudi Arabia, and distributed. And this is that Saudi understanding of Islam, which then comes all the way into South Asia, into Indonesia, and so on, which is very deeply anti-egalitarian. I mean,
Mhm.
you know this, what I'm talking about, because suddenly people stop saying, Ramzan, and they start saying Ramadan. The mosques, which used to look different,
Mhm.
suddenly start looking like Saudi mosques as Saudi oil money comes in.
Mhm.
In Afghanistan, almost the entire lot of people who go into the Maulvis and others go for training to Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
They don't go to train in Deoband and in other places. They go to Saudi Arabia, and there they also learn a very deeply anti-Shia, heterodox, anti-Sufi approach to Islam.
Mhm.
They learn anti-Muslim brotherhood ideas and so on, and they come back with a really rigid perspective on Islam, anti-communist, anti-Muslim brotherhood, anti-liberal, and so on. And that is what begins to define Islam in the post 1960s. With Saudi oil money, with the
Mhm.
help of the CIA, this is what gets pushed,
Mhm.
and this has an impact on Islam. I
Yes.
mean, it is interesting that in places like Kashmir and so on, where the Islam was so complicated, and in fact had a beauty to it, had a poetry to it, becomes Saudified. In
Mhm.
Indonesia, the Islam becomes Saudified. Just the architecture.
Mhm.
You're walking in Jakarta, where there used to be these beautiful old mosques. Now
Mhm.
you have these giant, petro-Islam mosques. These are petro-Islam mosques. These are
Mhm.
mosques that are fueled by oil money,
Mhm.
and they have a different ambition. The tallest minaret. I mean, the ideas of Islam in most of the world weren't to seek to have the tallest minaret and the loudest loudspeaker.
Mhm.
The point with Bilal, Habs, the first muezzin, the point of the Bilal story is that Bilal Habs was a beautiful muezzin. He,
Mhm.
he sang he sang the call to prayer beautifully. Not that he was loud.
Mhm.
Okay, if you go back and read the stories of Bilal Habs, they don't say he was the loudest muezzin. They
Mhm.
say he had the most beautiful voice. Yeah.
Mhm.
But now with the petrodollars, you want to have amplifiers and massive speakers and have the loudest muezzin. That's
Mhm.
not the history of Islam. Yeah.
Mhm.
This is a this is the oil money speaking.
Yes.
So of course all of this deeply influences, changes, and in my mind, hierarchizes a
Yes.
religion which is not a hierarchical religion.
Yes.
It is in fact a horizontal religion, which
Yes.
is why it attracted so many people from
Mhm.
China all the way out to Western Africa,
Mhm.
initially. Within 100 years of Muhammad's revelation, Islam had reached the edges of China and
Mhm.
had reached Andalusia,
Mhm.
Spain, and West Africa within 100 years.
Yes.
Okay, that's amazing. Yeah, that's because it preached equality.